trepidation or inspiration?
Dr. Hill, I just want to let you know I'm in the classroom now.
Welcome, welcome. We're talking about intelligence and learning styles,
Okay.
ethnocentric learning styles. And essentially, do you think Black people have a learning style? Let's just open it up.
Uh, I think everybody got their own individual learning style.
Do tell. What do you mean?
Like some people are visual learners, some people are hands-on learners, some people learn through experience. Everybody learns differently.
I agree. So we just had that conversation actually, and we were tying it to this guy Sternberg, who is really talking about that. He's saying that there are many different kinds of intelligences that often are not captured, and there's more than just one.
Right.
And I think the perfect segue into conversation with you, because the video that I watched was my first encounter with your brilliance.
Yeah.
Right? So the backstory for my encounter with Jaylani is that prior to this, I was teaching at Ithaca College in New York. And there was a point where I said, I want to go home. And even though I came to Cleveland frequently to visit my mother, I wanted to see like what kind of videos were out about the city. So I was watching videos from, the Board of Education, just trying to get a feel for what is going on. And through that process, I arrived at this video interview by, what's his name? Charlie Bowes?
Yeah, Charlie Bull.
Charlie Book. And it was in the title is like East Cleveland Hoods. And so in the video, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm seeing things that I grew up around. And there pops Jaylani. And it's this interview which you all got to watch. But as I watched it, I was like, wow, he's just so much intelligence there. And as an educator, the quandary was like, how is there so much intelligence there? But schools have pushed him out, or we haven't created a conducive environment in schools to capture that level of brilliance, not just his, but so many other children in the community. And then what can we do differently? And so I was watching the video like, man, if I would love to work with him. Like, I don't know, we would do a youth program. I don't know what we would do, but I could just see it. I could just see it happening. And so I didn't actually think that I would run into you,
right.
but apparently the universe saw differently. Yeah. And so I was just at Target, literally just at Target, and one day I look up and I'm just like, I said his name wrong, but I was like, Jaylani? And I'm not on a mask. He doesn't know me from anybody. But I'm like, yeah, I saw your video. And I had actually shared his video with my doctoral students last year because I wanted to sort of situate his voice in relationship with other scholars. And I wanted them to just engage some of the theories he was putting forth, some of the assumptions. And so that was my interaction with him. And that is what has catapulted us to this moment. Welcome to Life Cycle Learning and Development.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. So can you give us, I was going to show the video, but I think we all have seen it. Well, I know we all have seen it. How did that video even come about?
I actually reached out to Charlie Bull once I noticed he didn't have any interviews in Cleveland. So I took it upon myself to step up and put the city in a different light from what we're known as around the world. As far as mediocre sports team and everything else that's bad. I wanted to give people a different view of Cleveland and the type of people that live in the city.
Wow. So where were you at in your life at that time?
I had just moved back home. Just got off a 21-day fast. Just finished reading Malcolm X's biography. So I was at a elevated state of mind. I had a higher level of consciousness, and I was ready to start speaking out. I just needed a platform to use my voice on, and I just happened to be so blessed to get on Charlie Boy's channel.
Wow, so what? That just is amazing to me on so many levels. Have you always been this elevated? How were you as a student?
As a student, honestly, I never really cared for school because I feel like school restricts a person's intelligence, or the school restricts the range a person can use their intelligence on, because school restricts the way they teach you. So me personally, I never really cared for school, but I always did my work. I never flunked out. I always did my work.
And so what are we doing wrong? Because on this call, so we have so many experts in so many different fields. We have administrators, teachers, people in admissions, just all kinds of people.
Right.
How can we reimagine schooling or even community engagement in a different way, just to be more impactful?
I think there needs to be more creative methods when it comes to teaching. More relatable ways, more relatable techniques to keep the students engaged and intrigued by learning in the college environment. One of my biggest struggles when I was in college was my professors just bored me. They were very predictable. I knew what was going to happen when I went to this class and that class. The professors need to switch up their approach in teaching students.
Agreed.
Right.
Were you about to say something else?
No.
Or someone else?
Go ahead.
So I think what's interesting, and folks on the call, if you have questions about the interview or about what's been said, please do chime in. But I think what's so interesting is that a lot of the points you just made were also, presented in the articles we just read. And that's the quandary. Like, that's the conundrum to me of for me personally, of being a professor and trying to conceptualize what it is we're actually doing in this space. Like, what are we really doing? What ways have we been conditioned to do it a particular way? And then what ways do we need to reimagine how to do it, particularly as people of color, trying to serve pursuits or, aspects of reform that are beyond the institution. And so I thank you for your comments. And if other folks on the call have questions or want to chime in, please do.
I got a question. So, and we read about it as well, but I always hear people talk about, play the game to change the game, especially when it comes to education, when it comes to, Black and brown people in education. It's a lot of it is we're playing the game to change the game, right? So even some of my experiences with having to go to, St. Ignatius High and then some predominantly white institutions, I found myself playing the game, but didn't know that I was playing the game until I, got to that, like you talk about, a higher level of consciousness and started understanding some things around me.
Yeah.
So now I spit to my students, like, look, do what you got to do inside of this system, but understand, like, once you break out of the system, you can pretty much do whatever you want to. Just get to the level, go to college, whatever. I just want to know your thoughts on that, because I'm kind of changing. I'm kind of thinking I should change my message.
Yeah.
Just all this stuff, you know what I'm saying? But it's hard to change that message when this is what.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. I agree with your message actually, because that's actually the way it has to go. Like, we could talk about the methods that we want to see changed, but change isn't going to take place immediately. For right now, they have to deal with the system. They have to abide by the system's rules. So I agree with you in telling them play the game until they can change it. I don't see nothing wrong with that.
Jelani, this is... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Danny.
Question for you from a perspective, not from like these experts in education and all these articles, because there's always like, we need to do this, we need to do this.
Right.
It's just like theorizing over theorizing, and it's never actually that's like a lot of my issues, where it just becomes this big echo box of like, well, we need to do this, we need to do this, and we
Right.
never do it. So you're somebody who's not like, you're like living history.
Right.
What's your perspective on changing this system? Since we keep like, oh, we need to like we need all these things you mentioned, all these articles I've read for years, bro, saying the same thing, but we seem to never actually do anything.
Yeah.
So what would your take on that living history in the moment of actually going and doing something, like you were like going on getting the interview, like you went out and did it.
Yeah.
Here in the article, like, well, let's talk about, this theoretical educational theory. I was like, okay, can we like use it? Like, how do you, from your perspective, how do you think we can like get up and actually move forward?
Really simple. We just have to take action wherever we can take action. Instead of talking about it, we need to be about it. Like, it's as simple as that.
And what brought you to like that state of mind? Because it's not, it's not always the case that people see themselves as, powerful or being able to sort of bring about change, whether it's personal change, like changing their own circumstances, let alone, community reform.
Yeah, well, it all started with me making a change within. Once I knew I could change the inside, I could change it. I knew I could change everything around me.
And where does that come from? Is that just innate, or aspects of your community, your family? Where does that mindset or that sort of stance?
It comes from the heart. Just really feeling sincere about something and wanting to accomplish things you put your mind to. It all starts in the heart.
Well said. Well said. Any other questions?
One more question. I have one question to death.
No.
Like
No, we have worked to this point. Yeah.
What was a book that really changed your perspective? Like, to change your perspective on how you do things, on how you seek to attack things. Because you said you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and that was the book for me.
Yeah. That was the book. That was the book that actually did it for me. That was the book, man. That was the deepest book I've read so far, up to date. That book took me to another level, man. It really enlightened me. It really helped me out a lot. That was the book. Just that one autobiography. That book, it changed a lot, man.
What stuck out to you in particular? Like, was there any of the concepts that he was saying that really stuck with you, even now?
What stuck out to me in particular was just each transition phase he went through. Each phase of growth he went through, from hustling in the streets to becoming a devoted Muslim.
This meeting is being recorded.
To broadening his perspective of life and race, and just his overall presence as a man on a mission. Like, his dedication inspired me to become dedicated to what I like to consider my calling.
I have a question in terms of just your thoughts on, as you talk about those different dimensions, how important is code switching? Because a lot of what we're talking about, like one of the things that I think makes Malcolm's work penetrating is his ability to take the language that would be weaponized against him and unpack that. So you couldn't talk him in riddles, watch interviews. Like, he was prepared for the interrogation, inquiry, whatever.
Yeah.
But he also understood that he couldn't, there was a time to sort of be in the pulpit and pointing your finger, and there's also a time to sit down and have dialogue, because pointing your finger only gets you so far.
Exactly.
Like, you got to be able to have dialogue. So I'd be curious to know about your thoughts on how important the ability to code switch is, what you think schools could do to value code switching, or that's something that you would even think young people in school would benefit from.
Right. When you say code switching, what exactly do you mean by that?
So code switching, in the sense of, I recognize there's some language I can use in the street that I can't use necessarily
in the classroom. Okay.
However,
Yeah, that's very important. It's very important to be able to code switch, because if you have that ability, then you expand the amount of people you could potentially reach with your use of dialogue. So it's very important to code switch. Anytime you want to put yourself in a position to take power, take initiative, and stand up for something, you have to have that ability to reach more than one group of particular people. So I think it's extremely important to be able to code switch.
Delaney, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, in the sense of teachers in your educational life, were there any teachers that stuck out to you that actually made a difference, and I guess I'd say like went against the grain in the traditional way of how education becomes so oppressive? And what was it that teacher did, if there is one, to help inspire you specifically that's different than the traditional manner?
Honestly, I would have to say one teacher, we called him Rev, because he was like a reverend / teacher. What stood out to me about him was he treated us like his own children. So when we got out of line, he would discipline us like a father. He lectured us on things we would learn about life rather than things we would learn in the classroom. So just those little things that he did stood out to me. And he's probably the only teacher I could say really stood out of my whole educational life.
I have a question. So after you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, what was the very first thing that you believe that you need to do?
The very first thing I believed I needed to do was clean up my act as a man. So that's when you saw me in an interview admit that I was clean off of marijuana. I hadn't got drunk. I was really trying to come into that period of my life where I was fully focused on a mission. That's the first thing I did. Then after that, expanding my wisdom. I kept reading, kept doing the things that elevated my mindset to a higher state.
Hey, Jelani, I want to ask you, what are your thoughts about the future of East Cleveland and Cleveland? Because you talked a lot about the city in your video. So what are your thoughts about the future of our city?
Honestly, I feel like things are slowly coming together as far as rebuilding things, knocking things down. But I feel like we still need to work together as a city, as a whole, as a community, to enlighten our children and teach them better, because things are getting better in one aspect, but things are also getting worse in another aspect from what I see. So we're making progress, but we still got a lot of work to do.
And to go along with Tiffany's question, how could you reimagine East Cleveland? What is your reimagining of East Cleveland?
Okay, so my reimagining of East Cleveland is freshly paved cement streets, no potholes, lots of black-owned businesses, lots of blacks employed, felons getting a chance to change their life around instead of going back to the same tactics that got them locked up. The community coming together as a whole to stop crime instead of interrogating it, better educational systems, newer architecture, more genuine people who care about the community and want to see the community go forward, and people who are willing to take the extra time to help the younger generation out with things that they don't get the help with.
I have a question. Once you started to elevate yourself and decided to go on this mission to view the world around you differently and not become what society expects of you as an African American male from East Cleveland, how did your friends start viewing you and family, and how did you separate the two to continue to excel and not fall back into?
Some of my friends supported me. Some of my friends genuinely wanted to see me take myself to the next level, wanted to help me out however they could to continue going forward. Then some friends I just had to cut ties with because they couldn't understand me or what I wanted to do. And as far as family, my family, I've always had support from my family. So that's not an issue for me. It's just being aware of my circle and being cautious of the company I keep. Right now, that's something I have to work on for myself as a man, because I feel like my progress from then up till now, it isn't where it could be if I had executed everything correctly. So, it's a process. I'm still young, I'm still growing. But, it's just like anything. If you become successful overnight, you're gonna have friends that are gonna be rooting for you, then you're gonna have those that are envious of you. That's what I had to deal with since the interview.